Hi everybody, so we're back and now we're looking at the Hanged Man. It's card number 12 in the tarot deck and the keywords are surrender, sacrifice, and that you're bringing things to an end. Now, the tarot card that you'll see here is that I'll put up here afterwards is from my personal deck. It's a deck that I designed, the Serendipitous Tarot, and that will be available end of November. So if you want to pre-order, feel free. All right, now that I've done my ad, let's have a look at the traditional imagery on the tarot card. So it's usually a man hanging by one foot or by his neck with his hands bound. Often there are two pillars and a cross giving the impression of a doorway into another realm of being once removed, marginalized. Now, while the man is uncomfortable in his restrictions, he does not wear an expression of pain on his face. Rather, he has a look of calm resignation and sometimes even amusement. So let's have a look at some traditional decks. So this one is probably the most traditional of the lot that I've got here. It's the Morgan Greer Tarot. And as we can see, do also look at the way that his foot is, that his leg is there, that it makes that little triangle between his legs. You'll see that on my card as well, even though the placement is a little bit different, and we'll be looking just now about that specific placement as well. Right, next up we have the Witch's Tarot, Ellen Dugan. Also look at the halo around his head. He's very serene, he's very peaceful. Once again, you see the legs, and he's once again bound. Right. Going ahead, we need to look at the Druidcraft Tarot, also following quite a traditional take on it. Don't want to leave that one there for too long. People might get angry. It's a bit explicit. What I do want to maybe show just here at the back is you see the sickle there with the wheat. And that is just something to keep in mind. Right. So the Wizards one, we did see a crow on. There's a crow on a lot of them. We'll see, well, ravens. We'll see the same here. So here we see him sitting and his legs on the same manner, but we can see him in the portrait above, upside down. And within that, there's another portrait or mirror that shows him upright. And inside that, another one and another one. And it is good to look at all of the ruins that we've got here. Then looking at something a little bit more modern, we can still see the same basic symbology here. We can still see the ruins right here in this little whirlpool. Right. So, the Hanged Man, it's interesting, that card, it's a hanged woman, not a hanged man. All right, when we start looking at the Hanged Man, it is good to remember that in the original tarot imagery, now we're talking 1400s and such, it was sometimes depicted as Jesus being on the cross or being crucified upside down. That is why you'll see on a lot of cards, you'll see a halo. In most cards, he'll be blonde. Just showing the exact same thing. But yes, he is a visionary who sacrifices one life to find another. This card is very much about endings, but an ending within life, an ending of the ego, an ending of the self. It's a sacrifice of the self in order to find something new. That's why we see the ruins everywhere. That's why we've got the wheat, the abundance coming. And this goes back to old mythology, and we're thinking of the Norse gods, where Odin was actually the original hanged man. That's why we always see the ruins here. So he self-sacrificed himself. He hung himself upside down from the world tree for 9 days and nights. And in return, he was rewarded with the ruins, which is the gift of written language. So the thing here is to sacrifice for the greater good. The card is very much about the greater good. This card is like, maybe you should sacrifice a bit more. Maybe you should stand back. Maybe you should keep your mouth shut for now, because you know what? Things are going to play out in your favor in the long run. Sometimes it's better to give somebody just what they want instead of what they actually need, and let them learn their own lessons, even if that's not necessarily a good thing for you at the moment. On the other side, depending on which card lands next to it, it can also mean you should stop sacrificing so much of yourself. If you were to sacrifice for yourself, not for others the entire time. And I think that's a beautiful message there coming through. And it's one that we actually should think of, and one that we should remember. When is it worth sacrificing? The hangman is always searching for a way to turn his life or the lives of others around using sacrifice or by surrendering. He looks for a peaceful and a logical way out, which is great at this time. He doesn't like conflict. He wants to step away from the situation. He'd much rather just hang there and be peaceful and everybody kind of leaves him alone. He doesn't necessarily care what others think about him. And he has this peaceful resolution, and he knows that sometimes by surrendering, sometimes by sacrificing, you get to go away and actually learn quite a different type of lesson. So he is more of a call of when is it worth sacrificing and when is it not worth sacrificing. When is it time to take care of yourself, and when is it time to sacrifice so that somebody else thinks they won, and yet you have won at the end of the day, because you do have this time. Now the card does represent reversals, almost like the Kabbalah tree of life. What he's saying is that you can win and lose at the same time. You can be in the mundane and the kingdom at the same time. In Kabbalah, we will talk about Malkut and Keter. And those two are exactly the same thing. The one is kingdom, and the other one means mundane. And so what happens is the Kabbalah tree of life, let's say it was on here, it actually overlaps like this. So it goes around into the circle, and you can see that the Zephirot, which is Keter, and the Zephirot, which is Malkut, is actually the exact same Zephirot. It's the exact same plane of existence. It's the same concept, the same idea. It shows that opposites can be one, that winning can be losing, that losing can be winning. And it makes me think a lot about a speech that J.K. Rowling made, her Harvard speech, and she said in there, she was talking about the benefits of failure, and it basically comes down to you know what, you shouldn't be scared of failure because there's a benefit to it. You have learned how not to do it that way. It's actually a step in the correct direction, especially if you didn't know anything to begin with. And this is what this card is reminiscent of. It's reminiscent to tell you, what, failure and success can basically be the same thing, because you can get a success out of failure. That you can sacrifice and yet you can be selfish and take at the exact same time. It reflects the connection of the depths of the unconscious and the subconscious mind, which is once again all the same thing. The one is just exceptionally abstract. And that is what this card is all about. So it's telling you sometimes you're going to need to sacrifice, sometimes you're going to need to compromise, sometimes it feels like a sacrifice, but you're gaining more out of it by sacrificing. But also other times you shouldn't sacrifice yourself if there's nothing in it for you. There needs to be some form of a harvest. You should be thinking of yourself when sacrificing, even if it is for others, for the benefit of others, because you should get a benefit out of that as well. And it can be a very difficult card to morph within your life, because we are so taught, let the other person walk in front of you, let the guest dish up first. These are simple, it's just etiquette, and we don't even think about it. But those small little deeds, which are objectively really good deeds, I'm not saying stop doing that. I'm just saying that those are the little deeds that indoctrinated us so much that we stay together in an unhappy or abusive marriage for the children. And we don't think that that sacrifice might actually be hurting them. Sometimes you need to sacrifice that concept that you've got, get out of the marriage to create a better life at the end of the day, and everybody wins at the end of the day. So, once again, it's what is worth sacrificing here. Um, Look at the entire story. When we start looking at justice coming towards the hangman, the two actually work so closely together when you look at them. That's the way that they should be. You need to weigh out the options before you actually sacrifice. And it's a pity that these two cards are usually far apart within the tarot reading or even within our own day-to-day lives. Right, I'm going to be back soon with the next card. Bye.